All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode with Adam, aka GoCarp, aka Palantirs, aka Pilly the fucking best. We are here today, and it's another Saturday morning episode of Palantir. We've got Adam breaking down a ton of new government things that have gone on over the past couple of months. I think Adam was here maybe last month or 2 months ago. So it's been at least 4 or 5 weeks since he's been on the show. And every time he comes on, it's usually because there's a lot of new stuff to discuss in regards to the government side of the business. Adam, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I think last time I was on was like right before earnings. So that was it's been a nice 5 weeks since. Hopefully the next 5 weeks we'll do the same thing. That would be pretty crazy. 20s to 29 and maybe we'll go 30 to 39. Let's see if I can bring that magic again.
The stock definitely surpassed our expectations. We both thought 25 by the end of the year. We're at 32. Let's start the conversation there. Then we'll get into juicy government stuff. What is your recap after earnings in terms of the growth you saw? And do you think $32 makes sense after those earnings?
So I think it's a fair number in terms of valuation. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm also bringing in the future growth. And obviously me and you and other people in the community know a little bit more than the average analyst about Palantir specifically. Obviously it had no business going back down to 20. That was just crazy macro overall. I was very fortunate to get in and get some on the way down and snag some at like 22, which was, I don't think I'll be getting back ever again at 22. Yeah. Can the stock go back down to 25? It most certainly can. I mean, we just saw a crazy macro, event happen where it went from literally 28 to 20 back to 29. So it is possible. Do I think the stock will close above 25 like we were saying? Yeah, I think now we can say with a little bit more confidence that's more likely to happen.
Yeah.
But the key thing about the earnings, though, at least in my world, obviously, and Karp wrote it in the shareholder letter, was that the government was waking up and they were getting ready. And you're really starting to see that, especially with the Maven report that we'll get into. And obviously, and I'll be the first one to say it, the commercial is the growth story. So that's really obviously where the street and where all investors should obviously take a good look at to see as long as the commercial is exploding, which it really is. And, I think it was Arnie that dug it up. They cut the workforce. So they're growing bigger, faster, stronger, and doing it with like less salespeople. I think it was that he pulled up the stat on. So it's really a remarkable feat for any company to do that. So, and I think part of that is the boot camps that they themselves are not getting involved in, because you have real consulting firms like Accenture, which we'll touch up on a little bit, and Deloitte and Ernst & Young and other companies, and obviously some governments in there as well, that are putting on these boot camps, and that's selling the product for them without them having to add people and cost to them. So, can they keep getting that cost down? Eventually, you're going to have to keep adding to sustain the growth, obviously, and service the client. So, it's really exciting on the commercial front, and hearing other companies talk about them more publicly, like Lowe's gave them another great shout out. So it's really exciting stuff. From a stock standpoint, we went up tremendous, just in this year alone. So I would not be surprised if we finally, hit a ceiling, even if we touch 35 and then we kind of, consolidate, call it 28 to 35 the rest of the year.
How impressed are you that we've actually held 30 for 2 weeks now?
Super impressed. I'm not going to lie. I mean, maybe it's my hopium on this one. I think it is part of it. Yes, obviously the buying has been more institutional. It's not the people like you and I. And I don't know if it's because, someone knows S.M. Pilley, or if it's because the suits just really believe in the company and they're holding it, at least for a core position, for long term. And there will be some suits who will hold and, swing trade that if they do make the S&P, and if they did get a, 10, 12, 15% bump in 34 weeks, they'll probably dump it, take their profit, and maybe come back again. Some will hold it.
Right.
So we'll see. It's very impressive because especially a lot of stocks that are not in the S&P, and granted, we focus a lot on Palantir, they're just really volatile because they're not in that stability of the S&P. But it's crazy. But I wouldn't be surprised if we go all the way back down to 25 per se. Anything can happen, like we saw.
Yeah, I agree. Anything can happen. It's just very exciting that we've held these levels. And it's really one of those things where we kind of are a little greedy as Palantir shareholders, because you always want your stock to go up, but sometimes when it goes up too much, you start asking yourself, like, are we making a mistake? Like, what's going on? Like, how is this happening? Rather than just feeling grateful for it, because you have PTSD from 2022 and how everything falls 80%, right?
I don't have PTSD. There's no There's no PTSD. I mean,
you were buying a lot too that time, so that helped.
I mean, trust me, being that we're interacting with the community and people every day about it, like there are people out there that are scared because now we're really back in uncharted territory because we haven't been here literally in 3.5 years. Yeah. And we remembered what happened 3.5 years ago. So you're like, oh boy, is it going to happen again? I don't believe that's going to happen. The company is in a significantly different position today than it was 18 months ago. Granted, the macro conditions probably are not as good as 18 months ago. I think that's a fair thing to say. But the company is so strong and it's early. And that's the key thing. We're not talking about a 20-year-old public company. We're talking about a 4-year-old public company that's really starting to get its wheels turning. So we have way more upside than downside. Can we go back down? 100%. Will we go back down? Probably. We'll probably touch 30 again, and we might even go 29, maybe 28. Any crazy event can happen. But I think we're going to finish above 25 on the year and probably might finish above that, 30 level right around there. There's, a lot more, 4 or 5 months left?
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. The company's different. Like in 2022, the company wasn't even profitable and interest rates were going up. Like the company in the macro is so different, and they're reaccelerating growth, which we're about to talk about in the government and the commercial business. And when you're reaccelerating, as long as you can keep reaccelerating, and it's going to get tougher and tougher because now they're going to have to put up quarters compared to these quarters, which gets even harder. But if you can keep doing that, the street's going to keep rewarding you at the end of the day.
I agree with that, but the one thing, and I don't think any Palantir shareholder from like our point of view can really say so. Maybe like a guy like Druckenmiller who's like been in there and really knows. We haven't really seen them have a client for, call it 10 years. They haven't been a public company for 10 years. So we haven't really seen them get a client where they started out doing, call it $3 million a year. And then in that 10-year span, they're doing $25 million a year, or they're doing $50 million in a quarter. So one day we're going to get an earnings call and it's just going to be what just happened. And it's going to be like, we're saving you $500 million. We're asking for $50 million a quarter. Don't like it. We're pulling the plug. And guess what? You're going to pay.
I think you just froze for everybody, right? Yeah, you just froze for everybody. I think you're back. You're good. You just froze. You're good.
I'm here. I blame Ted for going crazy.
You were just saying we're they're going to ask for $50 million a quarter after saving you $500 million.
That's the thought process. And if you're not going to say no to that, basically, if that's what the cost savings is, that's the whole point.
Right. All right, well, let's get into the biggest deal that we heard last week, and we'll start the conversation here. So Adam texted me this last Saturday, and I couldn't believe it, but it was real, and it's true. And this is what we got going on. Code Red Titan update, tactical intelligence targeting Axis node production. 94 Titans are being scheduled to eventually be built by the United States government. They want to pay $1 to $1.5 billion over the course of 5 years to a company or a set of companies to get this contract. Now, why does this matter? Palantir already got the original Titan contract for $178 million in February. We beat Raytheon to get that contract to design and build those Titans. And so the question is, if we did a good job on building those, which I believe was 10 of them, we got ordered to do for $178 million, what happens if the government wants to spend 1.5 billion. So Adam, what can you tell us about this, and kind of why does this matter for Palantir at the end of the day?
First thing I just want to say is shout out Bobcat Gang for the past 3.5 years of dealing with my bullshit and dealing with your bullshit, for constantly looking at Titan. We kind of had been knowing all along. We knew it was going to be them to win. The first thing I want to say about this is it's a request for information. So it does not mean they are going to get a contract. All it is just them and their buddies who are building Titan. They have to submit a proposal to Uncle Sam to basically give information on why they should do this, and then they will do the contract. So it's not this is not groundbreaking by any means, as money hitting the books today or tomorrow or even in 2025, to be quite honest with you. And you can see it. It's starting about 2026.
Right.
So it's just a request for information. The important part about it is, at least from my point of view, because I'm looking at the stuff every day, of how quickly it came out. So if you want to play the I don't know what's going on game, the Army got their first 10 prototypes from Palantir of Titan roughly about, call it 3 weeks ago. I forgot when that headline was. Well, that's bullshit. So, they have had a Titan, for a while. And these project convergences and the Scarlet Dragon exercise, this is where they were doing the Titan, tweaking, if you will. The Army's obviously not going to say they have it because it's not supposed to be public knowledge.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm right. I'd like to bet I'm right, because I said way back when, before they even were awarded the next phase of Titan, that part of the reason why it was taking so long is the soldier feedback, the soldier touch points. They wanted that to get refined, and Raytheon was causing a bitch fit and, having a temper tantrum in the toy store because mommy wasn't letting them pick their toy. So that's what I think happened with that. And that's why it took a little longer to get awarded. But the fact that they're willing to move so quickly on get the RFI out, that's a very positive thing. So they're going to fill out the RFI. And when Titan was first awarded and when it first came out, originally it said roughly about, I believe, 150 to 200 Titans would be ordered. And they wound up picking 94 for whatever reason. I don't know why it's 94. I don't know if it's because the physical distances that they're able to cover. I don't know if it's because they just cost so much and they don't want to spend more. I don't know. But the dollar amount was pretty much in that ballpark. I figured it'd be over $1 billion. Now, are they going to see all of this money? No, they're not going to see all of this money. A lot of it's going to have to go to the cost of building the Titans, of course. Right. And that involves hardware, labor to work out the software. There's going to be trial and error. They are working out right now, the phase 2. And that's why they put out this, RFI for the final phase, because as we speak, they're tweaking it. They're probably running a test right now in some secret area, and whoever's overseeing it is probably saying, no, that's wrong. It needs to be this. Or can you make it so when the soldier does blah, 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 it can, refining it and tuning it. And it just takes time. But the fact that
let me ask you a question real quick. Is Palantir not literally creating the hardware, right? They're creating the software for the Titan, or are they doing both on the vehicle?
So they're not touching any of the hardware, from my knowledge. That is going to be done from the Andurils, the Lockheeds, the Sierra Nevadas, in my understanding, because they're not a hardware company. Even if you want to just talk about hardware, SkyKit, the hardware piece, none of the hardware is theirs.
Right.
So I don't believe the hardware is theirs. They're obviously the prime contractor on it. And I'm sure, God forbid, if the project went off the rails, Uncle Sam would be pointing the finger at them. They wouldn't be looking at Anduril or L3 and saying, what are you doing?
Right.
So I think that is, we're able to see. So that's why I don't think, granted, the 1.5 billion is all theirs, they're all going to have to get chunks of that to build it and take their profit, of course, and pay everybody. But let's see what the final RFP and what the final contract looks like. And also, it might be, I don't know what they're expecting for this longevity of Titan. Take like an F-35. They're expecting that thing to last like another 30 years. It's already a pretty old plane or whatever it is, or I might be getting it mixed up. I don't know if they're expecting, this Titan, the advanced or the basic, to last, 20 years. So that's going to be another part of it, is how often are they going to get paid for contracts to innovate and maintain and upgrade these Titans? That's another part of it. That's something that's so far out, I don't even think they have any idea of what it's going to be like. And it's a good thing. And they're in the business for something not to break. But realistically speaking, God forbid, if a couple, adversaries come by and, hit a Titan with a payload, you're down a Titan. If they take out 10, 15 Titans, how important is it for them to fill out another 15 and get them back out there? Obviously, those are questions for way down the line, but it's good. And one thing that we'll touch up on is, and I showed this with you and your viewers maybe about 2 years ago, the modern battlefield picture. And last night we were talking about it, and it's basically almost all filled out. And you can see where, quote unquote, the Palantir and the Palantir lenses, and we'll go through with that. And you'll see that a lot of it are people that are on the Titan team, ironically. So it's good.
Of this 1.5 billion, obviously Palantir wouldn't get all of it if they win it, but you would argue that getting the contract itself, even if it's only like 20% of the value, is what matters, because it continues to get us sticky into the new AI modern era of how the government's going to spend money.
Correct. So it's not the largest government deal in the world by any means. Compared to most, it's actually not that big at all. So, the big thing is it's the stickiness that will keep us within the DoD and in the armed forces as a whole. And from a Wall Street analyst standpoint, from just the dollar amount, when you hear that figure, billion, that's it. Your mind goes somewhere. It's just psychological. Even if the deal was 950 million versus 1.2 billion, hearing that B, your head just turns a little bit. And the key thing is that's going to be their first $1 billion contract. So it's going to be one of how many, and then that's going to start to get going, and it gets stickier. And then you have the whole commercial side. So millions are turning into billions. That's the key.
Right. And that's also the key for future contracts, because once Palantir is used to getting these types of deals, it's kind of like they're learning how to get these deals. They're learning how to navigate getting those deals. And as they get more of those, it starts to compound aggressively. The big thing I liked about Q2 was that government reaccelerated from 16 to 23% in 1 quarter, and U.S. government accelerated from 12 to 24% in 1 quarter. So to me, I'm looking at the government business doing $370 million, and I'm like, this is really sticky, and they didn't have to do 1 billion boot camps to get these deals.
I mean, obviously, what we mostly focus on is the DoD and the armed forces, and the government's a lot bigger than that. And the State Department is starting to use them, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the IRS, just to pick a random agency, the IRS is a very big fan of Palantir.
Yeah.
So, and I dug up the other day on the thing, and granted, it's not a big deal at all, but one of these consulting companies is selling a Palantir license to the FAA, the Federal Aviation, whatever. And it was a 1-year license. It was like $500,000. Still, $500,000 for one license for a year, not bad. And you didn't have to go out and get that. Like that's it. It all adds up, and that's government money. And I did see a few months ago, Ukraine, they paid $13 million for Palantir license. It all adds up, and it's starting to go a little bit faster and bigger and more, because the government, obviously, as Karp says, is very lumpy, but now they see the value and they trust Palantir. So they're willing to give them bigger and spend more. And I'm also going to assume, just from a pure technical, computer scientist standpoint, now that they've had and used the software for over a year now, they feel comfortable using it. It's not like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to go call Chad and figure it out, where they need these where they need the forward deployed engineers. So it's it's big, it's spending. And like I've said, the government is the biggest enterprise. Uncle Sam is the biggest one with the pockets, and that's not going to change.
All right, well, let's get to the next topic, because someone who's helping getting these government deals, or who they think will help them get these government deals, is our boy Mike Gallagher, who used to be in Congress for 7 years. He's now hired as a defense consultant for Palantir, and he is a well-known China hawk. He was one of the main people that got the TikTok legislation passed a couple of months ago. What was your reaction to this? Because I know that when you saw this headline, you probably thought, damn, I'm really good, because you already knew this was going to happen, and then it happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but
no, that's okay. But that's why you're here. Every month you're here to toot your own horn, because everyone knows that only you find this shit and no one else does.
You know what? Thank you for being my once a month therapist. So I mean, yeah, myself and Bobcat Gang, we were all over this back in March. We knew he was coming to Palantir.
How'd you know?
I mean, a report came out that he was leaving Congress, and I don't really remember, because I can't remember this morning, never mind back in March. But I made a post about it. I'm sure you can find it if you dug it up. But a report came out that he was Deep Value did help. Deep Value actually was one of the main reasons that we got confirmation, and we knew it immediately, because after all this report came out that he was leaving Congress and he was going to a company and blah, 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 Gallagher came out like the next day and said, this is complete propaganda. and he and Deep Value found it. And like, we knew at that moment, like, bullshit, that was confirmation. We knew exactly right from that statement that it was true. We did think at one point it might have gone a little bit awry, because Gallagher left very messy, in my opinion, because it happened.
Can you describe how that happened?
If I remember how the turn of events happened, like, he just kind of left Congress. And if I remember, there was like 2 months left until like his election, or whatever it might have been for his seat in the House, if I remember correctly. And he just wanted to get out of there, and he wanted to join the private world. And I could be completely wrong here, and I could be remembering this completely incorrectly, by the way. And the Republicans were very upset with him, because instead of helping them and waiting it out to keep the seat as a Republican seat, he basically said, I don't care, I want out of here. And then Palantir, and like the wording coming out, it was like, oh no, now he's not valuable, so we don't want him, because he just he burned all the bridges. It was just a really, really, I mean, based in maybe today's political environment, it wasn't that ugly of a split up. It was just kind of a little messy. But that's kind of how I remember it going. But we knew he was joining. It was just a matter of how long till they would make it official.
Okay, so why does this guy matter for Palantir? Let me give you my thesis, and my thesis is pretty elementary. I think he's going to help us get more deals because of who he knows and his connections in Congress. But I feel like there's more to it than just that.
So I'll say with Gallagher, and you actually asked the question about 10 minutes ago that was going to be answered in the Maven report, but I'll just answer it now. And one of the big things of why Maven was able to get in is they said there was three things. And one of the three things was the ability to navigate contracts and acquisitions. So Gallagher, I think, is going to be another source to help them navigate contracts and acquisitions. Because if I'm not mistaken, he was on the House Armed Services Committee, which is a pretty big committee in Congress, and it's very defense related. So I think he, like Wendy was in the DOD during the Obama-Biden administration.
Right.
So I'm sure she helps navigate these contracts and acquisitions as well. So that's why I think it's going to help. And thank you, Deep Value. With Gallagher, his big things were really, and you touched up on it, was the TikTok bill, which they're not doing a very good job of enforcing, but that's another conversation. His big thing is he's a very big China hawk. He's very big on deterring China, but domestically speaking, China's buying up a shit ton of farmland, and he doesn't want them to do that because a lot of the farmland is near military bases.
Yep.
So they're not using the farmland to help feed Americans. They're taking the farmland to help spy on American military secrets.
Right.
And Americans overall. So obviously that's, in my opinion, I don't think that's a big, scary, radical thing to say we should stop a foreign country spy on the United States military. I think everyone should be able to say good thought process. So I think he's gonna, with Palantir, he's gonna be able to provide, the State Department, for example, or the Department of Homeland Security, whatever it might be, Palantir products that will help them fight these foreign adversaries taking farmland or buying, shell companies or whatever they might be doing to get, American corporate IP secrets. So it's a very good hire. Will it pay off? We'll know in due time. But I like it.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting hire. I agree. There's a lot of interesting stuff that China's doing that Palantir is obviously against. And I think one of Palantir's main pitch to government agencies and to companies that have supply chains in China is that this is not going to be easy to navigate over the next 10 years. Like we knew companies that had supply chains in Ukraine, obviously Ukraine, Russia happened, and then Palantir kind of helped those companies navigate that situation. I think if Palantir's argument is China is probably going to invade Taiwan or they're going to be more aggressive and combat the values of freedom and liberty, and that's going to mess up business, then you need to have an approach that can hedge us against that. And Mike Gallagher, you never know. Even he might be in a meeting for closing a commercial deal, talking to a company with a massive supply chain in China, and they bring him in just to close the deal as he's talking about the threats of China because he could talk about it better than a forward deployed engineer. So I think there's a lot of ways they can use him.
That's a very good point, like 100%, especially if you're talking to like a South Korean company or a Japanese company, and you could say like, hey, you need to have a, even if it's in Guam, I don't know why you put it in Guam. I can't picture Guam as a manufacturing kingdom, but just to say that, and it will be an interesting thing to see how he progresses throughout his tenure at Palantir. I thought his interview to introduce himself was really good, because to tie in the supply chain thing with Shyam talking about Operation Warp Speed. And that's back on Q2, is all about rebuilding the American supply chain and manufacturing. And, they're going really thick on it, and Shyam especially. And he's not wrong about how Chrysler and General Mills, they all used to, be part of the war effort because it was either that or die. And they figured, we better start manufacturing missiles instead of Lucky Charms. And that's what they did. And with Warp Speed, that's a national security issue, which is a government thing, but they're applying it to the commercial. And Gallagher would be a great, perfect person for that, especially someone who's so entwined with China and that part of the world. And it will. And just the one thing about Warp Speed, I think that actually came out of their COVID work, because for those that don't know, Operation Warp Speed was actually about getting the COVID vaccine distributed to the Americans and the world. And I think they just took the name Warp Speed off of that and were like, hey, it was good enough. It's cool. It works. It's about supply chain. And I think that was actually Tiberius that they used for COVID. I could be wrong on that.
Right.
That's Ted telling me, no, he didn't use Tiberius.
I love when Ted makes an appearance. Every episode he has to be here. Okay, should we talk about Project Linchpin and this post you had about Maven, Titan, and Linchpin coming together?
Yeah. We could do a little bit about Linchpin. So Linchpin, they said it's expected to be fully funded in 2026. And, if you've been following me long enough, it is the Titan timeline, like we just showed. So I believe that Titan is the linchpin. So, and a linchpin is just something that brings everything together. Right. And that's what Titan is. So do I think Palantir is going to contribute specific AI and machine learning algorithms to Project Linchpin? Yes, I do. Are there going to be other vendors who supply their AI and ML algorithms to Project Linchpin? Yes, I do. And that was the whole reason why they built Titan how they did with the MOSA approach, because they want all these different technologies to be able to be integrated. And you can read it, and this is the entire article basically just about Linchpin. It came out of the Titan project. And when I show you the picture of the battlefield, you'll see why they needed Titan to get all the sensor data integrated together, and why out of that, the thought process must have been, oh, if we had an algorithm or a workflow that can do A, B, and C, that will reduce targeting time, whatever it might be, by an hour, by 2 hours, whatever it could. So the fact that it's coming together and it's supposed to be over the next 500 days, so we're talking about over the next year and a half, we should be seeing a lot other companies, not just Palantir, delivering AI and ML solutions to Project Linchpin that will be used in a Titan or used in a different vehicle or used when they're wearing a CPI-2, the IC2 helmet, whatever it could be. So it's coming along. Obviously, this can come from any company. It could be Red Hat. It could be Elbit, whatever it might be. But it is full steam ahead.
Right. Yeah, and this is really exciting stuff because, again, as you said, it's coming together with a variety of different things, whether it's Linchpin, Titan, and how Titan ultimately can become the Linchpin. What implications does this have in the context of the Maven contract that we got a couple months ago?
Yeah, and I there's really not much more to talk about on Titan and Maven for that matter. So Titan and Linchpin, other than expect to be fully funded, and I have no idea what that dollar amount will be. It could be $10 million. It could be $10 billion. I don't know. But as it relates to Maven, and I just sent you an image, by the way. Well, you can pull that up in a few. I'll let you know when. But as it relates to Maven, Maven has been something that they've been building out for over 4 years.
Yeah.
And Maven is, quote, under the JADC2 umbrella, which is over Project Linchpin. So think about it like this. Maven is a solution for Project Linchpin. So you could be an operator in a Titan using Maven. That is the simple foundation of it. So that's why it's so big that they were able to develop Maven. And Maven specifically, and I would pull up my post or Sham's post about it. If you haven't read the Maven report, and the title of it is called The Building the Tech Coalition, How Project Maven and the U.S. 18th Airborne Corps Operationalize Software and Artificial Intelligence for the Department of Defense. It is something you have to read, because for myself, Deep Value, 007, and a couple of the other, Palantards who are fully in on the defense side, Maven is the thesis.
Yeah.
That was the main thing that I took out of it. And Maven is one application. Maven's not Titan. Maven isn't Brown Heron. Maven is Maven. That's one little thing. And if you read this report, it talks about when they were building this, they were using soldiers from the Air Force, the Space Force, the Marines, the Navy, NATO. It is everything that Palantir Gov Defense Intelligence is.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is it's a prototype. It's a 1 year. So they have the 4-year kicker, and they'll get that exercised. I'm not worried about that. But after that 5 years is done, I can't even imagine what Maven is going to be able to do, and how much they're willing to pay, and more importantly, how many users are going to be on it. That's the key thing, because right now only, quote, a handful of people are using Maven.
And this is how Titan started off, as a prototype, right?
I mean, I'm going to assume that's how it did. Maven was more of a, Maven started out before Palantir had their hands on it. It was originally a Google project. So
Oh yeah, you're right. No, you're right.
so, it was something the Department of the Defense knew they wanted to do, and it was something that they knew they had to do. They didn't know Palantir would be the ones doing it 5 years later, but I'm sure they're very happy about that for many reasons.
I mean,
But
Eric Schmidt, the co-founder of Google, called out Google, or co-CEO of Google, on not taking the Maven contract.
I mean, it was a very bad calculation on Google's part, obviously, because I just want to read this one piece of the report, and there's a lot of unbelievable information in here. But just so you can see, and obviously, me and you don't have access to Maven, and I don't think most Palantirians do, to be honest. I believe you need a security clearance to use the software. So don't expect a guy like Chad to know the ins and outs of Maven, because I don't think he's on the defense side. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty confident you need a security clearance to use Maven. And just to put this in perspective of how efficient Maven is, using the Maven Smart System, the 18th Airborne has demonstrated an ability to match the performance of the time-critical cell in Operation Iraqi Freedom, a targeting cell that is widely viewed as the most efficient in U.S. military history. What is even more impressive, however, is that the 18th Airborne achieved this milestone with roughly 20 people in its targeting cell, whereas Operation Iraqi Freedom benefited from having more than 2,000 staff members. Okay, so we're talking about going from a staff of 2,000 to 20. Think about the ability to move resources around when you're able to do the job of 2,000 people with 20 people.
Right.
And that's Maven 2023. What is Maven going to look like in 2027?
Yeah. And the 153 million that's guaranteed out of the 480, that's 31% of it. They're saying, hey, take this at least to get started. And then, it seems very likely you'll get the rest if you're getting 31% of the contract guaranteed in the first year, because they see how valuable it is to go from 2,000 to 20.
Yep. And Deep Value actually did everybody a huge favor. He actually broke down the 26 pages for everybody, like the main chunks of it. So I would definitely go ahead and read that thread if you don't want to read the full report, because 26 pages, it's not a lot. It can obviously take some time, but it's a really, really impressive piece of technology that they built. And the fact that it's a pilot and prototype, and like you said, it is 1 year is 31%. They'll get the other 4. And then when it's fully efficient and out in 5 years, maybe 20 can become 10, maybe 20, maybe it can become 5. So who knows where it can go. And the main thing
for everyone who wants to check out that post, check out the link right here that's pinned from Deep Value, because it seems like it's a very valuable thread. I'll be reading that today. But the link.
I definitely recommend everybody read that one. I posted the very basic of it, but he definitely posted the full thing that I would recommend doing. And the main thing is, and they repeat this, which is the key part, is the main reason that why they were able to get Maven is because they understood the acquisition process. Here were the 3 things they said: significant operational experience. They've been working on Maven for over 6 years at this point, so that they knew. Nuanced understanding of AI networks and/or data science. Okay, I think we know where Palantir falls into that. Yep. And 3, experience and expertise with government acquisition and contract strategies. And the whole part of this report is literally about government contract and acquisition strategy, because it's so difficult.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like the difficultness of it is what Palantir is ready for, to take up on the challenge. And that's the fun thing about Maven. The more you win these difficult deals, the easier it is to win the next difficult deal. And you start to realize, hey, maybe that 0 to 1, no competition in the government, like no real competition for these deals, that piece is going to end up playing out over the next decade.
Yeah, and just to throw something off about how tough it is to get into government, think about FedRAMP. and Palantir's solution, which is FedStart.
Yep.
So Palantir knows this so well because they had to sue the Pentagon to get in.
Yeah.
So they're probably one of the few companies out there that's, I guess you could say, is not a defense prime. I guess they're right on the edge at this point. I guess to me and you, they are, where they had to sue the government to get in. They know the process so well. And I have to throw this out there because I just mentioned it, and it's going to be a ginormous potential opportunity for us. So just to shift off of Maven, this is a good segue, and you can see the smile on my face, is there is no update with the Operations Center contract. However, you got something. They put out a, was this an RFI or an RFP? I believe it was a full thing. But they put out the Department of the State, so the State Department, same people with North Star and Blinken mentioning Palantir that I've talked about. Well, they put out let me know what you think about this. Artificial intelligence and machine learning solution. I wonder who's able to provide that. Oh, and on top of it, what do you need to be able to do? The solution must also provide the capability to leverage large language models, develop and support a range of AI-enhanced workflows, and able to secure, process, and analyze government data with various classification levels, meeting federal security requirements such as the DoD Impact Level 6. Hello. There we go. That means we're down to 3 companies, Amazon, Microsoft, or Palantir, and having a moderate level or higher FedRAMP authorization. FedRAMP, FedStart. FedRAMP, FedStart. There it is.
What contract is this for again?
I like to think Palantir will win this, so everyone keep their panties in a wad. It came out a few days ago. It's for the State Department, and they are asking for an artificial intelligence and machine learning solution. That is the name of the request. And you have to be able to access IL6, process all that data, and like that they said.
Yeah, Palantir's getting that deal.
And 007 actually dug it up. And when I first saw it, I was just like, is that our Operations Center contract? Because that's under the State Department. And it's like that pilot ended at the end of July. And the thing is, at least from his saying, and I think he's right on this, is the Operations Center, this is a strictly United States product where it's only people on U.S. soil using it, where this will be global, wherever, State Department employees will be. So that's why it's a little bit different. And it's not related strictly to the Operations Center. It's to the department as a whole. But look at that. It's the State Department. They shout out Palantir a month ago. We know Palantir is a leader in AI, ML, workflow, and analytics solutions. You have to be able to do IL6. They have IL6. And you have to be able to help with FedRAMP, which they did with FedStart. So where's my
idea what you think the contract could be worth, or you have no clue?
So I don't remember seeing a dollar amount on the request. The Operations Center contract, a pilot, was $1 million for 3 months, and the reason why I keep referencing that, granted this is not it, is because the Operations Center is meant to be something where if a kid in Tanzania throws a rock, we know about it. So anything that happens in the world, we know. That's basically the premise. But you're stationed in DC, where you could be anywhere, I believe. Like you can be in, Beijing in the State Department office. I did not see a dollar amount, but I'm expecting it to be really, really big. I mean, you're doing the whole Department of the State for AL, and ML. And the key thing is, other than the solution, because that's the name of it, solution, AI, ML solution, is FedStart is the solution to FedRAMP.
Right.
Like we've known that for over a year. That's their solution. And then you have to be IL6. And when I remember the last time I was on here, like I said, I believe they won the DISA prototype, the robotic combat vehicle, which I tried to find an update on the other day and I couldn't, so I'm kind of pissed about that. But they got that because of IL-6, and the electromagnetic battle management tool because of IL-6. Is this going to be the third main thing because of IL-6? So IL-6 is still new, but now we're starting to see it. And if they win this, part of it is because A, they're better than Microsoft and Amazon, and B, they have IL-6. If they never had it, they probably wouldn't have been able to give in this opportunity.
Right. Dude, this is exciting. This is a lot of compounding because, as you said, even describing LLM, IO level 6, etc. Like at this point, if you know anything about Palantir, you know that's a Palantir contract. Now, Amazon or Microsoft theoretically could get it, but then you got to ask yourself, do they even care that much to get a deal like that? Like, is that in their, they want to sell more cloud? Do they really want to dive deep into something like that? Seems like Palantir, that's already getting a contract like Maven, would want to be kind of the sole arbiter of that contract.
And it would make sense that it also goes to Palantir, because if you remember when the pilot came out, in the pilot contract notice, it said Foundry was the only possible commercial off-the-shelf solution for what they were looking for. And they name dropped Microsoft and another company. So they're already aware of Foundry's capabilities. And if I remember in the operation pilot, they only were asking for IL-5 with the ability to also gain access to IL-6.
Right.
So I guess that's why Microsoft was the other one name dropped, because they figured, oh, maybe we can get this. And then they got smoked. So I think, will they bid on it? I'm sure they will. I have no idea how much it is. And even when you just read the mandatory qualifications, just the little basics of it, solution must be based on a proven commercial off-the-shelf software platform. So that's Foundry. Solution must process significant out-of-the-box functionality, enabling it to be deployable on day one. Foundry. It must be as a single vertical integrated platform with end-to-end solution, leveraging seamless integration. Foundry. Like, the whole thing screams Foundry. And especially when you get to the FedRAMP and the IL-6, that's like where 99.9% of the competition just gets their legs cut off.
Right.
But that's and that goes back to what we were saying earlier with the government getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This is the Department of the State. This is not Department of Defense. They're asking for you to be able to access certain silos in the DoD, but you must have IL-6 accreditation. So now you start to see the crossover. So
right.
it's real. And think about it. I feel very confident they'll get this, and I hope they do. And this goes back to a contract that I came on here last time, that if you don't know, that I hope they got. If you remember the NATO apps deal that we discussed about, unfortunately, they didn't win.
Right.
However, the winner was Planet Labs. And if my research is correct, Accenture either owns Planet Labs or it's built off of Planet. I don't really know how it all works out, but I saw the LinkedIn post that Planet Labs built something under something that Accenture built on Foundry, and even Aki commented on it, and Planet Labs won the contract. So this is what I said, even if Palantir doesn't win and their partners win, they win, because that stuff is built on Foundry.
Yep.
It's built on AIP. So they need their partners to win. So like when Anduril is going to win like the CCA, like this combatic, autonomous vehicle, this air vehicle, Palantir wins. Right. So when they win, we win. And that's the beauty of it. And you're really starting to see it start out and really starting the seeds to grow a little bit, because a lot of these guys, they were just not big companies fighting to get in. And now with FedRAMP and FedStart, they're able to showcase and prove, hey, give us some deals. And Anduril is coming for lunch. If I was Raytheon, I'd be more scared of Anduril, to be honest.
Yeah, I would imagine. And then
did you see the picture I just sent you on Twitter?
Yes, and also I'm putting up the link that RC just sent. So RC has a link right here. I'll put this in the chat. This is a video everyone can watch themselves about Palantir, Accenture, Planet Labs, and the harmony between that, especially in the context of meta constellation. So this is also very interesting and kind of reaffirming that point. And then your picture is here. Okay, so describe this picture to me. What are we looking at here?
So this picture is, and there might be a more modern one. This picture is about 2-3 years old. And the key thing about it, if you can zoom in, because I'm blind as a bat right now, is all the stuff that's in, you can zoom out a little bit. I just want the, just like, right there. That's perfect. Yep. So anything that's not in white, so all like this yellowish green, that's all of the West and the Allies. So that's all of, America, call it that. And the reason why I brought it up is because about a few years ago, you couldn't complete this picture. Now you can. So it's all coming together. This is the army of 2030, and it's only 2024. They obviously want to field everything by 2025 at its peak perfect form. It's not going to happen. And you can look at it just strictly off of Titan. Now, if you look at it through a Palantir lens, Titan's Palantir, Hades, that plane all the way up on the top, Sierra Nevada literally just got a contract like 3 days ago. And what is Sierra Nevada? One of the team players with Titan.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, without going all the way into it, especially that TLS stuff, a lot of that is Lockheed. And there's some Northrop. So you start to see the Titan team is the battlefield if you look at it. And the main thing about this as it relates to Palantir is obviously Titan and its connection to all of these things. But two things. One, this is Palantir's ability to stay sticky and get into a Sierra Nevada like they can get into an Airbus.
Right.
As they built Skywise, and I'm sure Skywise does some of their defense stuff, they can provide that solution to a Sierra Nevada. And they'll be able to get into that over time because they're starting to work together over the years with Titan, constantly collaborating. But the main thing is that EWPMT, which is an electronic warfare planning management tool. That tool was supposed to be Raytheon, and they axed the contract from them in April. Why? So is it because, and I'm not saying it's going to be Palantir, but Palantir is building the electromagnetic battle management tool for DISA. Maybe they're able to say to Palantir, do you think you can include these features and then, or you think you can just do this better than they are, and then you'll have electro warfare management planning tool as well as electromagnetic battle management tool.
Well, we did beat Raytheon for Titan, so you might think the government starts at, well, can you beat them for something else that's better?
And this is straight up, software stuff. So I don't think, they very well could still win Raytheon. Maybe the product they delivered was just not to where the DoD was satisfied, and they said, absolutely not. We're not giving you this contract. Go back to the drawing board. Or they could be thinking, like with IVAS, when we're seeing that with Microsoft, is no, you don't deserve this full $21 billion. You're not delivering what we anticipated, and we don't feel comfortable spending that with you. And Palantir is going to take a piece of that. So Is Palantir going to steal this management tool? Maybe. But the key thing is that image is really starting to get filled out. And that's the key. And that's 4 years in the making. And they realistically probably have another 3.5, 4 years to do till they get it to perfection. So it's exciting times.
Right. Okay, let's end off the show on this one. We got a lot of juicy stuff out of Adam today. So if you guys are not following him, I'm putting his Twitter in the chat. Please make sure to follow him, and you can join the Discord from his Twitter in the link in his bio. 2 IL level 6 companies joined together, and they partnered to deliver enhanced analytics and AI services to classified networks, Palantir and Microsoft. What was your reaction when we saw this deal come out?
So as it relates to Microsoft and Amazon on a national security, level, their relationship is not going to surprise me because, like you said before, Microsoft and Amazon, let them go at it with the cloud. Let them go and run that game. And we see that Palantir has, their solutions on Azure and AWS and the other cloud providers. So they're only going to get deeper in terms of a relationship over time. Now, I'm assuming some government people prefer using it on Microsoft or only use Microsoft versus AWS. So I don't know the nuances of it, but that's why they have Apollo. So they're able to really, you're not stuck on that infrastructure. So it doesn't surprise me because you need IL6. And I mean, when we got IL6, I don't know, was it 3 years ago? Was it 2021? It definitely wasn't last year. It's like 2-3 years old, but it's relatively new because it just moves slow. They didn't win Titan because of IL6. They won the electromagnetic because of IL6. They'll win this AI ML State Department because of IL6, I believe. They'll deepen their relationship, and you see with OpenAI, they built their stuff on Foundry. There's a relationship there as well that they'll just continue to grow together. And like I said, as they win, we win. Obviously, like take Jedi, for example, the cloud contract that Microsoft won with 10 billion and Amazon had a bit about that as well.
Yep.
They broke that up. So eventually they'll put out in 10 years another cloud contract, and Microsoft will get a piece and Amazon will get a piece and Oracle will get a piece, and everybody will eat, and Palantir will eat everybody's, crap and leftovers because we're really being the software, the operating system of choice of being deployed on that network.
Yeah, I agree. And the one unique thing about this contract as well, or this deal, was that this is the first partner that Microsoft's working with Palantir. Not exclusive yet, but basically exclusive until they add more people into essentially integrating AIP into the Azure OpenAI LLMs for the DoD.
Before we both haven't said it yet, and that's ironic, is we forgot that Nadella, he mentioned Palantir.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge, obviously getting a shout out from Lowe's or Novartis, whatever it was a few months. But other than Nadella, maybe you can argue from influential CEOs that people listen to, maybe you can say Elon, Cook,
Sundar.
Bezos,
yeah.
Sundar. I don't. I think they would listen to Nadella before Sundar, to be honest. 3 CEOs maybe that people would say, nah, like that's it. So it's a huge, huge deal that he name dropped Palantir. The deal is good. We'll see. And the main thing is they make a 10-year deal with compute usage. More compute usage, more people are using it, more money they're asking for.
Yeah, and when Nadella mentioned them, he mentioned them a week before the deal came out. So all of us were wondering why he mentioned them. A lot of this stuff is never on purpose. They didn't just randomly say, let's mention Palantir. It's probably because something was happening. And then a week later, this deal comes out, and Sham is in the press release, and Microsoft president is in the press release, and they're all talking really nicely about this collaboration, this partnership. And it makes you think, 3 years ago, the conversation was, will Microsoft buy Palantir? Will they compete with Palantir? Now it's like, dude, they don't care about that. They need Palantir to make their offerings on the cloud much better.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to see, and this is the new trend that I'm kind of noticing, is a company, either as like a whole or a very important individual like a CEO or a CFO, they'll name drop Palantir, and then like a couple weeks later, a Palantir deal will be announced.
Right.
So we weren't really ever getting no name drop. We weren't getting many PRs. So that's why like that it lines up. Microsoft lines up. State Department Operations Center pilot goes well. They make the announcement. Now this thing is out there for AI and ML. Hopefully it's Palantir. And it all lines up. And if that's going to be the things that we need to look out for, That's great because that just means they're forecasting it completely in front of us. And it's not as hidden, or it's also because these companies, they're way more proud, or they don't really care about the nonsense FUD that is Palantir.
Correct. Correct.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. There he is, folks. Once again, comes onto the show for an hour and drops a ton of bombs. There's Adam. Please make sure to follow him on Twitter and check out his Discord on Twitter. Adam, this is exciting. Obviously, the stock is a lot of people are taking you and I more seriously now that the stock is reflecting some of that growth. But regardless of what the stock is doing, the stock is just a byproduct of the compounding effect of so many different elements to Palantir, commercial, government, etc. And it seems like the story is just getting started.
It really is, and you can read it in the 10Q and Carp's letter. Like, the government's reaccelerating and waking up. It's early in the commercial, and the fun part will be in 5 years from now. The numbers that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be looking back at this time and kind of be like, man, do you remember that? And laughing.
Almost like we're looking back at the stock at $6 and be like, man, do you remember that? Like,
Do you mind going back to $6 for a hot, quick second real quickly and shoot right back up? I wouldn't mind that.
It's so crazy. We knew there was something special here, but within a year, they really showed this is going to be big. And I think, not to shit on other companies like Snowflake, but we're seeing how the street's reacting to companies with no real communication of their vision, even if their numbers are okay, versus a company where the numbers might not be as good as Snowflake, but the vision is so clear that you believe it's going to get much bigger over the long term.
Yeah, I still don't get it. Maybe it's because we live in this every day. I don't get why people can't understand the vision. It's really not that complicated. The government is the mission, the commercial is the growth. And when you take a company like Snowflake, and it's not because I enjoy shitting on Snowflake and making yellow snow cones on them, it's because just look at the company just as a business from being run from a leadership standpoint. They don't make any money. That's great. The revenue is growing. The clients are willing to spend more with you, but you're also spending so much to keep that going. Where Palantir is like, buddy, I'm collecting my profit. I'm returning to shareholders. I'm increasing the growth. And companies like that are extremely hard to find because they are so financially sound on their balance sheet. And the C-level executives, they know we need to do A, B, and C, and we need to do this to execute it. And that's what we're going to do. And we're not going to stray from that. The only thing that I think they strayed from their original thing, which was a good thing, is they got profitability quicker. Yeah. I think the last thing we need to end on is originally it was profitability in 2025.
Yep.
Carp delivered that in 2023.
Yep.
And the main reason why they did that, and they mentioned it in the Maven report, is the government didn't want to get a product that was so good, so great, and then the company that was behind it not be able to pay their bills,
right,
that they had to just shut it down or sell it to the gov, because we know what would happen at that point. It would just fall apart because you're not having Carp and his team doing what you're having, the government manage it, and you know how well they do things.
Right.
So that was the one big thing that I think that shifted. And that was a great mind shift because it brought profitability quicker, brought the Maven, and now with the boot camp, all things have gone just in overdrive.
It's been a hell of a pivot. Absolutely hell of a pivot. And it started with profitability. I think you made a really good point there. Like, without profitability, you don't get some of these government deals.
No.
They'd rather just give it to Amazon or Microsoft because they can at least believe the company will be around 5 years from now. So
if Amazon and Microsoft aren't here 5 years from now, I think we either are sitting in Tahiti on a private island that we just bought, or got a real big problem. So it's one or the other in that way.
Right. Really important stuff. Adam, thank you again. Thank you, 358 people, for joining on a Saturday morning. Means the world to everybody. Please make sure to check out Adam's Twitter in the description and in the chat. And we'll be back probably in a month, and we'll discuss some more stuff in regards to the government business.
We shall see what happens. So, Pilly the fucking best.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Enjoy the weekend.